Hi, everyone. I'm Kara Phelps with QSR Magazine, and I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar, Developing a Technology Strategy That Scales. As a growing chain, your technology stack should be a key asset in helping your brand achieve its growth objectives. It should allow you to manage multiple locations and ordering channels with ease, optimize operations, and perhaps most of all, allow you to quickly add new capabilities for flexibility when necessary. Quick service franchise Dave's Hot Chicken has enjoyed explosive growth and has no shortage of experience when it comes to developing just that, a thoughtful technology strategy that supports its expanding brand. A few housekeeping notes before we get started. First, a recording of this session will be linked at qsrmagazine.com, and you can also use today's login link for on-demand viewing. Second, slides for today's program are available for download using the resources widget on the webinar console. And finally, we will be answering audience questions at the end of the program, but please feel free to submit a question at any time. Our featured speakers today are Revel Chief Strategy Officer, Chris Lybeer, and Dave's Hot Chicken Chief Technology Officer, Davoyan. And I will turn it over to them to get started.
Thank you, Kara. Appreciate it. And to all of you out in the audience, good morning, good afternoon, good evening if you're watching us after the fact. Thanks for taking the time. We appreciate that. We know time is very valuable, and thanks for spending the time with us. Just a little bit about myself and Revel real quickly before we get on to the questions with Leon. I've been in this industry several decades now. It's more exciting times than ever for sure, especially from a technology standpoint, as we all know. Revel is a relatively new company, a modern cloud solution that focuses really on serving multi-site operators, kind of in the 10 to 2,000 chain space. I know that's pretty wide, but in that zone, kind of the center of the market. We really serve all verticals, table service, quick service, fast casual, and in fact, we're quite good at doing hybrid versions of those different concepts. And we also have a lot of customers who are kind of in the innovative high growth category. And what better company to talk to that fits that description of innovative and high growth than Dave's Hot Chicken. So thanks, Leon, for being here today. Appreciate your time because I know your time is valuable when you're installing 3, 4, 5 sites every week. So thanks for taking the time out. Hey, we're definitely going to talk a lot about Dave's Hot Chicken and the technology there. But I also want everybody who's listening to get just a quick readout on your background, some of the other brands you've been with, some of your other experiences, because that certainly is stuff that you bring to the table and also, informs what you do today. So why don't you give us a quick walkthrough of your history in this business?
Sure. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm Leon Davoyan, Chief Technology Officer at Dave's Hot Chicken. In my career, I've just really been lucky to be part of some growth brands. I just kind of fell into it. I've been involved with Baja Fresh very early in my career when Wendy's just purchased them and wanted to grow them. I've been involved with Pinkberry, and I grew them from a New York and California-based operation to nationwide and worldwide to 13 countries. And finally, I was last involved with Blaze Pizza. And so we grew that brand quite a bit, and that was a very successful brand. And in between, I've been involved with, casinos, fine dining, and popsicle stands, you name it. So it's been a fun ride. It's been fun.
Perfect. Well, it sounds like you should have retired 20 years ago, but I'm sure you love it so much you can't get out. So,
based on the headshot, it's it looks like I'm almost ready for retirement. I used to have some hair, and this was a couple of years ago, and I have nothing left.
Yeah, the pandemic will do that to you. All right, let's dive in and talk about Dave's Hot Chicken. So I'm sure people have at least heard about it, but why don't you take us through just some of the stats so that people really understand the gravity of what's going on with this really cool brand?
Yeah, sure. I mean, let's talk about the menu first. If you've never had Dave's Hot Chicken, the closest thing to us is essentially what In-N-Out is, but with fried chicken. And I know that the word hot is in our brand name, but you can also get, your chicken with no spice or mild spice. So, we cater to, almost everybody that wants to enjoy craveable fried chicken. We essentially have three combos and, a couple menu items and a few sides. Today, we're opening two locations, so that takes us up to 117 locations. But and although the brand's been in business for 6 years, the hyper growth has really been happening in this past 2 years or so. For instance, last year we opened 70 locations. Last year we opened 67, and this year we're targeting to open 70. We obviously have a lot more on the books to open, but as you know, construction timelines kind of slip, and and permits. The permit process takes a while, so we're pretty solid about 70 this year. And it's awesome because the brand is so young and so dynamic. And as you see this, I'm sitting in the our founder's office, and our restaurants are no different than that. You'll oftentimes find graffiti in every store we have, and really the graffiti art is based off of what's happened there locally. So it also relates. It's not only graffiti art that's beautiful, but it's also relatable to the geographic region that the store's in. So very exciting. From a social media standpoint, we have the highest Instagram followers per location among our peers, and we're the third highest in Instagram followers among our peers. We have Shake Shack in number 2, essentially, and Chipotle in the number 1 spot. So, and as you know, those guys have a lot more locations than we do. So, we've had a really good following from a social media standpoint. We leverage that on a daily basis to get people through the doors of Dave's Hot Chicken.
Yeah, awesome. You want to mention TikTok quickly?
Sure. TikTok's an interesting one. So late last year, we decided to do something with TikTok. Originally, we were just thinking, well, TikTok's TikTok, and I don't think we want to spend time there. But as soon as we started doing TikTok, we realized it's just our followers just shot up like a hockey stick, and we realized that, holy moly, there's something there. So we're now really focused on TikTok. Our followers continue to grow. We're surprised at how many views we get on our when we post a video, and really a lot of the organic content that drives the customers to our stores is generated from TikTok. We found that influencers, when you hire influencers, they don't, the impact isn't very, very big to as far as traffic growth to our restaurants. But when someone just goes out there and makes a video about Dave's Hot Chicken on their own will, it's just, you kind of see the impact there. So lots of love on social media platforms for Dave's Hot Chicken for sure.
Yeah. Well, definitely. This is definitely part of your innovative approach, I think. Everybody's trying to do it to some extent, but you've created a culture that's very strong and clear right out of the chute. So that's really neat, and certainly in part of your tech solution. But let's go and talk about the more traditional tech stack, like the stuff that runs a site, right? As you said, even though the brand's been around 6 years, and for those that don't know the story, it was a pop-up in a parking lot 6 years ago. So it's really only been the last couple of years that it's all been turned into, the growth story that it is today. So this thing is moving at an extreme speed. And, I think it's super impressive when you're opening several stores every week. And these are, by the way, big footprint stores, high AUV, long lines right from the get-go. So there's no tiptoeing in any of this. You got to be ready to go. I think I personally, we roll out a lot of brands all the time. We have 5 or 6, 100+ site brands we're rolling out right now. And I've been incredibly impressed with, how Dave's Hot Chicken has managed to keep this pace up. with very, very few bumps in the road. Now, by no means is it perfect. There's always some things to work through, both, at the micro level and at the macro level. But there hasn't been that moment in time where you've had to go, time out or push everything back or, what's going on here? The stores are, down all the time or whatever. None of that. And, hopefully Revel's part of that. But I think that also a lot of that's attributed, Leon, to your approach to this. And that's really what we want to talk about today when it comes to scalability, because I think everybody, more and more tech is going to be necessary to be successful in the restaurant industry. I think we're just at the tip of the iceberg. I mean, we're eventually going to technology the whole kitchen and connect everything together. And we're going to have to run restaurants like factories, due to the cost of labor and just all the dynamics that are happening in the industry. And we're just starting to do that. I mean, we don't even like calling ourselves a POS company. We're really more of a technology platform, but I see this the beginning of a journey. And if more and more tech is going to have to be deployed, we as an industry altogether are going to have to get better, faster, and cleaner at doing it. We can't. Gone are the days of 6, 12, 18-month projects to plan things out just to get, one new thing out there, to get some new menu boards out or a new labor scheduling module or whatever's next, an IoT kitchen, whatever. You don't have that much time. So you've got to get good at this. So Leon, walk us through, we had Leon really kind of, bullet down what are a handful of the things that kind of drive his philosophy that is creating the success that he's having, being able to move at this pace without a lot of problems. So take us through those bullets, Leon.
Yeah, what a lot of brands do when they're first starting is that they do everything at once. And the approach that we took was a little bit different, right? We wanted to layer that foundation first and then build on top of it. So we obviously picked a POS solution that was going to allow us to integrate with all these external providers, and that was very important to us. And so, so up until today, we just, we have POS, we have the typical online ordering and, gift cards, we have loyalty, right? But we haven't really activated loyalty yet, right? Because when, we knew that we needed to start collecting information, but we weren't quite ready to define what loyalty meant to us. And we really want to embrace loyalty and not just do what restaurant brands do, right? Which is, either a dollar spend based loyalty program or a visit based loyalty program where you work your way to getting something for free, like a menu item. We wanted to do something that's more experiential, more on brand for us. So we decided, what, we're doing too much. Let's just park it. So this year we're really looking at loyalty and what loyalty can be for Dave's Hot Chicken. So look forward to that in sometime in Q2, maybe late Q2, early Q3. But this year is really the year of innovation for us, right? So we laid the foundation layer, and now we can really build on top of that. So we're looking at dynamic quote times. How do we make it so that it's so that the guest is walking into our restaurant and their food is like hot and ready, like literally just leaving the expo station. And with that, we're also looking at guest arrival, to anticipate that guest. Because oftentimes you think, well, the store's 10 minutes away from me, so I'll just leave in, 5 minutes from now and hopefully show up at the store and my food's ready. But that doesn't really play out that way, right? You end up stopping at CVS to pick up your prescription, and then suddenly you're 30 minutes late. So we want to anticipate the guest's arrival also so that we can get the food there for them on time. We're also looking at some AI stuff, right? Because that's, although that's a word that gets thrown around, there's really some benefits there. We went into pilot thinking, well, it'll be a fun thing to talk about to the franchisees. And then we ended up thinking, well, this stuff is really good and we should really think about implementing this chain wide. So lots going on from an implementation standpoint for us and testing out new technology, which is very exciting time to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So we actually were at an event together a couple of weeks ago, and Leon did a panel, and you said one thing that really stuck with me, and it's on the one hand, it's so simple, and it's really not about the technology itself, but about how you think about planning around the technology. But I thought it was just incredibly good advice, and that related to how you build in enough time to make sure that when the bumps come up, that you don't have to keep moving all the schedules. And I see so many people, whether it's in a rollout, with new stores, or whether it's, retrofitting stores with some technology, they build this fairly idealistic, chum, chum, chum. Everybody's kind of up against the wall. And then once anything has to change, it creates, you could just picture like the dominoes when you stack them up falling, like you got to reschedule everything and whatever. And I think you guys, I've heard you mention a stat before too, that you've never missed opening a store when you ultimately planned it. So how do you think about that? Because listen, we all want to move fast. So that's an objective. On the other hand, we don't want to be in this chaos where we're replanning all the time. So tell us about your approach on that.
It's interesting. It's very easy, right? And I've said this a million times, and I'll say it again. If you're opening one store a month or you're doing one store a day, the process is the same. The only thing that really changes is your ability to recover. So you have to have an airtight process, right? And for you to have an airtight process, I can set up airtight processes for IT all day long, right? But then what happens when you bring in a franchisee or someone else that needs to take action? Things start falling apart, right? So as it relates to deployments and things like that, have it be a new store opening or a new technology deployment, you have to build in buffers at every step, right? If I'm expecting a franchisee to sign a contract or to cut a check, I'm going to give them 2 weeks to do it. I know that they can do it today, but I'm going to give them 2 weeks to do it. And if the franchisee doesn't deliver in a week and a half, then guess what? Someone's going to pick up the phone and say, listen, if I don't get this thing done today, we're just going to push your date out, right? We're not going to be able to make that opening date because we've already given you 2 weeks to get this thing done. And you haven't done it already. So it's really about having those conversations early on. And let me tell you, franchisees are in the business of making money. So when you tell them, I'm going to push you a week because you haven't cut a check, they're going to get that done right away. And, franchisees have a lot going on, right? They're opening a store, right? So there's more than just IT processes and homework for IT for them to do. There's more important things like making sure that the GC is on top of what they need to be doing. Because if the store's not built, nothing's happening. So from that standpoint, that's really the most important thing. You have to have your airtight processes in. You have to build in your buffers. And then, when you get really close to your turnover date, then you do your technology implementations, right? Being ahead of time doesn't mean that you get to install POS 4 weeks before the store opens, because guess what? When it opens, you're not going to have very much to use there. But it's always nice to be ahead of time.
Yeah. Well, I just think that's great advice and often missed. I think sometimes in everybody's desire to move quickly, you set up a plan that's so tight that it's just likely to end up in kind of a tailspin mode. So I thought that was great advice. You mentioned the integrations. You mentioned some of the things that you're already doing, some of the things you're thinking about doing. This is a fascinating area for me. We built our solution, to be very open and really to keep up with sort of the modern ways of connecting. Most partners say that we're one of the easier POSs, if not the easiest POS to integrate to. There's still work to do there, by all parties. But with more and more tech coming, you can see the trend of how critical this topic is going to be. If you go back even 5, 7, 8, 10 years, people probably had 2, 3, 4, maybe a sophisticated operator, 5, 6, 7 integrations. It's not uncommon for us to see now 10, 12. We've got some customers with 15 and climbing. And if I'm right, and I could be wrong, but if I'm right, and we're just at the beginning of more tech, I mean, just think about 2026 having 25 different technology pieces in a store that all have to talk somehow, that have to come together to have one source of the truth in terms of data. That's a big undertaking. And I think the only way you can do that is if you've thought about doing that from the minute you put something in the foundation, as you said earlier, you platform it. You got to get a platform that's capable of doing that. And you can't be too hung up on, when you're making a POS decision, just the feature functions and, oh, this one's missing two things. That really doesn't have much to do with the next 10 years. So
Right.
I know you guys actually, it was before your time, but the first few sites that went in when this brand popped up, didn't really go through a full evaluation, and they actually put Toast in a few sites. And then when the corporate team was built out, you looked at the situation and said, hey, what do we need for this next 10 years and where we're going? What were the couple of drivers that, made you pick the Revel platform?
It's two things, right? When you think of POS, you can no longer think of it as a cash register, right? Because those days are done. That was Y2K, right? For today, what you really need to look for, especially for a growing brand, is that your POS solution is enterprise ready, right? You need to be able to have it make a change to configuration to one store, a group of stores, or all the stores at once. And it needs to be easy because, I don't have a POS person on the team, right? I don't plan to have a POS person on my team because it should be that easy. It's expected that configuration should be that easy. And it is, it's becoming that. So that's one thing. Being enterprise ready is one thing. And really, the other thing that we focused on is a solution that's not uncommon to the folks at the stores, right? Typically speaking, the demographic of employees that we have working at the restaurant are folks that grew up with iPads in their hands, right? So it was important to have an iPad-based POS system at their fingertips, not so much that they're going to resolve their own problems, but when you ask them to go into settings and check their, IP address or their network settings, they're not afraid of the system. And that goes a long way. It goes a long way with us, helping the store with issues that they're having. It goes a long way with the POS company in helping our stores stay up and running also. So those two things are really the big stuff, right?
Yeah.
In addition to that, obviously having that open API is very important too, right? And that word is kind of thrown around quite a bit, and no POS company has an API for everything that you want to do, but it's also important to pick a partner that's going to say, yeah, that makes sense. We should really be thinking about integrating with these solution providers. So we're going to continue to build and enhance our API so that we can support you and these third-party partners in that. So those are really the three things that brought us to our decision.
Yeah, super helpful. The training aspect is interesting just because you and I have been around for a couple decades. You made the Y2K comment, but I remember when you used to have to plan and when you cut new technology and hours of training time per person. And we literally now, we don't train people. I mean, they know how to swipe. They know how to navigate, right? Because that's what they do every day on their phone or wherever. And technology can leapfrog sometimes. It's pretty fascinating. So that's exciting. All right, let's start to talk about going forward a little. A couple of things are up on the screen now about, preparing for growth. I'm sure there's a big part of your job that you're just trying to execute this rollout, but you've also got to be thinking about where you're going, especially since, as you said, you put the foundation in and you kind of parked trying to do too much. But share a little bit with us about, how you're getting ready to, move forward. And I mean, in a pretty short time, you're going to be, 300-400 sites. And there is a big difference between 50 or 100 and hundreds of sites. Problems magnify themselves, et cetera. Technology cut-ins are, touch a lot of people. So what are you doing on that front?
There's these two things that I fundamentally feel strongly about. One of them is continuous improvement, and the other one is zero defect deployments. Those are things that I've kind of brought with me to a couple growth companies. The part about continuous improvement is that, at the micro level, we review the performance every time we open a new store. What went right, what went wrong, and how can we fix it? And once every 6 months, right? So that's happening at the micro level. And once every 6 months, the entire IT department meets and we pick apart our process, right? Although it's working, right? We're opening 3-4 stores a week and it's working well. But that doesn't mean that we don't have room for improvement there, or maybe a little bit of pivoting to do to make it better, easier, more efficient. So about twice a year, we meet and we look at things from a macro level, and pick it apart and see where we can make improvements there. So between those two exercises, we're constantly improving our processes, and it's required, right? Because the world that we live in today, right? The world that the IT department at Dave's is living today is that not only are we opening new stores, but we're looking at new technology, right? Because we also have to improve what we're offering our guests and improving efficiencies at the store level. So we're not just opening stores, we're also deploying new software. So as time progresses, we can either add headcount, which is a very easy thing to do, right? Throw bodies at it, or we can get really good at what we're doing. And that's what continuous improvement, like that whole methodology, does. And zero defect deployment is exactly that, right? We expect to have deployments, have it be that we're changing a configuration at all the stores or deploying a brand new store, is that the expectation is that there would be zero defects in that deployment. Now, have we had zero defect deployments? Absolutely. Do we trip up every once in a while and have one or two minor defects? Absolutely. But we don't have catastrophic meltdowns because of the processes that we've built in. We know where the gotchas are, and we watch out for those before anyone touches the system. So those are really two things that really prepare us for growth and help us really drive the efficiency factor.
Yeah, love it. Love it. I mean, you're looking at yourself in the mirror all the time, which sometimes we don't like to do that, but it's very healthy, right? So
I mean, absolutely. You can't, I've always thought you can't get too cocky with it, right? No matter how many locations you've opened, no matter what your pedigree is, the minute you get cocky is when you let things slip through the cracks. So you have to stay humble. You always have to just be prepared to take on more, because it's just that's the world we're living in, right? 10, 20 years ago, all you had to worry about is deploying POS and hooking it up to an accounting or back of house system. Today,
you're leaving it alone for 10 years, right? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, imagine what the next 10 years are going to look like. So you have to have your existing processes buttoned up so that you can welcome new things and start learning from those new things.
Yeah, good stuff. Well, speaking of growth, let's go to the next slide, Julie. Just lay out kind of where you are with your franchise growth, and then everybody out there in the audience, remember there's a Q&A section, and we're going to transition in the next 2 or 3 minutes to answering some of your questions.
Yeah.
So Leanne, you've already mentioned this, but any other color you want to add here? And I'm going to ask you a sort of a trick question. I don't even think I warned you about this, but what are you most excited about that you might be doing 2 or 3 years from now? Not that it's a commitment, it's just a thought as to, where things could go with technology as you scale.
It's very interesting. I mean, we're the growth is here and the innovation is here, right? Like when we look at the innovation graphs, it's almost vertical, right? There's no horizontal to what's happening with the innovation around us, and really the food service industry is the last to pick up those innovative new things, right? But that gap keeps getting smaller and smaller as technology becomes more readily available. So today we're seeing a lot of things happening around us, right? We're seeing, you mentioned it earlier, we're seeing labor rates going up and profitability really going down, right? So who wants to be in business of just of not making any money or breaking even, right? We're all in the business of making money. So with all that, there's a lot of things happening, right? You hear about robotics and automation and things like that, and and those were things that the bigger companies with millions and millions of dollars of R&D budget would play with, right? Everyone would just kind of wonder, well, what's happening there? But it's a reality now, right? We're seeing robots that are making pizzas and flipping burgers, and we're seeing brands, not only test that technology, but also adopt it and start rolling it out. So I think the restaurant of the future is going to be a lot more automated, a lot more mechanical than you would think. Today I mentioned earlier that we're looking at AI, right? Initially, I said, well, it's a cool thing to talk about until we put it in. And now we thought, the system's going to tell us when we missed a pickle on a slider or something like that. But now it's, this AI system has learned so much that it's telling us when someone doesn't do a glove change, or when a tender has been sitting in hold for more than 6 minutes. We essentially, when we make our chicken tenders, we only leave them in that holding bin for 6 minutes. And then after that, we just got to scrap it. So that's very important to us. And so it's catching those things. And really, if you think about the restaurant line, right, nothing happens linearly, right, in a linear fashion. Menu items and boxes kind of play the musical chair. And that system's done a really good job at tracking where that box is going and keeping it associated with an order. So we're finding some great things that are happening with AI, both from a QA and what's the word I'm looking for? Order accuracy standpoint. So it's starting to become, it hasn't become part of our DNA yet, but it's starting to kind of inch into being part of our restaurant DNA.
Yeah, very cool. And I concur with you on pretty much everything you said. And one of the things I am most excited about, I think AI, sometimes people think that's a technology. It doesn't really matter. There's a lot of ways to do it potentially, but our systems have to get smarter. They have to do more of the work. We can't depend on a manager looking at a report to make a decision on something. And many other industries have already started to implement that kind of thinking, but we're headed there. So that's very cool. So speaking of questions, let's turn it back to you, Kara, and why don't you fire some questions our way?
Great. Yeah, thank you, Chris and Leon. We will now indeed turn to questions. We have some great ones coming in. First of all, what's the raise and rebuild or things learned for openings with your communication vendors, VSAT, long lines, etc.?
What was the question again? I didn't quite catch that.
What's the raise and rebuild or things learned for openings with your communications vendors, VSAT, long lines, and so on?
I'm not sure I understood that question. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think Leon, maybe just comment on how you're doing communications at building the network out at these places, and any learnings there.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we have one vendor for network security, and we've built a solid solution there with regards to network security, both from a security and connectivity standpoint. We as restaurants, the restaurant of today is connected, right? All the systems have offline resiliency, but who wants to operate in offline mode, right? So from that standpoint, I talked about the foundation layer. That's a very important part of the foundation layer, finding the right vendor that's gonna not only be able to provide you the services, but also grow with you as your services or as your store counts kind of develop and grow. So I hope I answered that question. I welcome any follow-ups there.
Great, thank you. Yeah, that was a great answer. Our next question is about AI. You're mentioning AI. If you could just talk more about it, is it in the ordering and repeat customer orders? Just some more details about AI this person is
Sure.
interested in.
Sure. I mean, listen, there's a lot of companies out there that are doing this AI stuff, right? The way we're leveraging AI is in the kitchen, right? We've hung, I think it's something like 5 cameras in the kitchen, from the fryers to the spice station to the production line and to Expo to really track the order from beginning to end. So what this AI system is doing is that it's tapped into our POS system and it's pulling every single check that gets rung in, have it be digital or a physical one in store, and then the system then ties that order to the production line in the kitchen, and so it tracks the order from beginning to end. And when it gets to Expo, it essentially either highlights the order green or red. And if it's red, then you see exactly what's red about it. Did we miss pickles? Did we put the wrong spice on the tender? Did we not spice it enough? Did we overspice it? So it's the system's all. I mean, it's learning, right? So it learns what the right amount of spicing looks like from, like, because you have a shaker and you're shaking the spice onto the tender, so it knows when you've put too much or too little or just right. So that's how we're leveraging AI. I know that a lot of fast food locations use that to read license plates and identify customers so that you can, you know, essentially talk to the customer, ask the customer if they want to use or order the last thing that they've ordered, and direct them by their name and things like that. We haven't gotten there yet. I don't know if we're, if we are the brand to do that, we'll certainly look at it. But I sometimes wish that when, for our drive-through locations, we just salute the guest with a, "Hey man, what do you want?" I mean, it's a cool brand like that. But AI is doing a lot, right? We just looked at a vendor that essentially looks at where your customers are waiting when they're waiting for their food and how long they're waiting, and what their temperament looks like. Well, maybe that's good for Las Vegas and the casinos, but what do we care? Our goal is to get folks in, food in their hands, and out the door or to our dining room to enjoy it. So I don't care about. I mean, I care about the guest waiting, but my goal is to not let them wait.
Sounds good. Our next question, how do you engage your target demographic?
It's interesting. Our target demographic is pretty young, right? And I'm not as young as they are. So, our target demographic, really, I think, and don't quote me on the stats, but I think I heard something like 60% of our core customer is between the age of 15 and 25. Right. So, how do you market to 15-year-olds, right? You don't even know if they have money in their pockets. Really our marketing tactics are really just social media, right? People see the food on social media. It somehow shows up in their feed, or they hear about it and they look us up, and the food looks really craveable, and it's even tastier than it looks. So, as soon as you taste it, you're kind of hooked. But, we haven't gotten that sophisticated yet where we have a CDP system and we're like reaching out to friends of friends and things like that. We're going to get there, right? We'll get there this year or next year. But most of ours has been really organic. It's, Armand, one of our co-founders, is also our chief branding officer, and he's largely in charge of our social media platforms, mostly Instagram, and he's really good at curating what our Instagram feed looks like and what to repost and things like that. So it's really all social media based. It's all digital.
For sure, that makes sense. Our next question is a three-parter. What is the size of your tech department? Do you have any on-prem solutions, or is it mostly platforms as a service? And lastly, what's your favorite heat level?
Oh, that's interesting. So the size of my department, we're 4 folks in the department, so it's me and 3 other guys. And we plan to keep it small and efficient there. My favorite heat level is probably the extra hot. I like the Reaper, but it's too hot and it makes me cry, and I don't like to cry. So extra hot is where my sweet spot is. I love spicy food. And as far as on-prem, we have nothing that's on-prem, and that's really strategic because if you want to move fast, you just can't worry about servers and securing servers and things like that. Just have it be in the cloud where you can, where the infrastructure just can grow exponentially at a click of a mouse rather than having to worry about upgrading systems and all that stuff. Gosh, I hate that stuff. So yeah, it's all cloud-based. Leverage the cloud as much as possible. At this point in time, the cloud has matured so much that it's not even like a thing. It's expected that you would pick to be in the cloud.
Right, right. Are you able to share the name of the AI system that you use?
Yeah, this is a UK-based system, so I have a lot of fun talking to folks that have a really cool accent. The company name is Satis, Satis, and their website is satis.ai. So look them up. They're doing some awesome stuff.
Great, thank you. Next question, can you talk about how you've evolved your tech stack to accommodate the supply chain needs of your stores?
It's interesting. So from a supply chain, I mean, the supply chain issues were real, right? Companies were having a hard time finding network hardware to deploy, and forget about getting cups and things like that. I mean, it was a real issue, but at Dave's we didn't really run into very much of a supply chain problem in IT. I mean, of course, we felt the pain, but we never had to. We were lucky enough not to postpone an install or stop opening stores because we couldn't get hardware to our stores. So, it was purely luck, right? I can't say that, hey, we partnered up with this vendor that had warehouses full of stuff. We just got really lucky. So the supply chain issue was very minimal to us. But I know of brands that literally couldn't open their restaurants for 6 months because they couldn't get the hardware that they needed.
And I think we'll have time for one more question. How have you found success working with your cross-functional teams, ops, finance, marketing, store development, as you build out new stores?
That's a very good question, because when I first started in my career, IT was sort of a sub-function of accounting, and no one really knew what IT really did. So we were in the corner of the office at best, if not in the broom closet. And as IT evolved, we're now sort of in the middle of everything. Everything that the company does has an IT component, kind of ingrained in the processes. So cross-functional support is very important to me, right? And the way I approach this is that I think of myself as a businessman first and a technologist next, because oftentimes IT departments find something that's cool, right? Like, for instance, that AI solution, like, oh, it's so cool, AI will figure this and that and the other thing out, and then they put it in the store, but it operationally doesn't make sense. So you have to bring these solutions to your cross-functional partners, talk it through with them, have them pick it apart with you, and then go into deployment. So it's very important for me personally to have that alignment cross-functionally.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, thank you so much, Leon, and thank you, Chris. Many thanks to Revel and Dave's Hot Chicken for making this program possible, to our audience for attending, and thank you for the great insights that you've shared with us today. As we mentioned, we'll have a recording of this program available on qsrmagazine.com or you can use today's login link to view it at any time. Thanks again to everyone, and hope you have a great day.
Thanks, Kara. Take care, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.